Ask any kid who grew up in the 80s and remembers the early 90s and they will likely remember Turrican really well, in fact, especially if you had a Commodore 64 when this released in 1990 as an exclusive by Rainbow Arts. This running gun game was so popular that several different platforms soon had it ported afterwards. I have always associated Turrican with home computers rather than consoles because here, at least in the UK, I don't actually ever recall seeing it on sale for consoles. Being a Commodore fanboy, Turrican is of course often talked about, being it on Facebook Commodore groups or at least remembered so fondly by so many people. Turrican was one of those games on C64 that was and still likely is the best running gun game from that era. Of course we have seen some awesome modern C64 games emerge post Commodore era of 1994, such as the awesome game Running Gun, but nothing has captured the same feeling that 1990 gave us with Turrican. It's an impressive release for sure. It was praised for its technical achievements as well as mind-blowing with graphics itself and its speed. It's flagship games like this on the Commodore 64 which truly showed off its capabilities. I suppose a little like the Amiga was for Shadow of the Beast, which I did a comparison video for just the other day. If for any reason you were not familiar with the game, it has been considered to be in the style of Metroid to some extent. The game itself isn't considered to be a linear one, which was another big deal in its day. We can go where we want and find plenty of secrets in this game. Its storyline is purely science fiction, but I won't go into that, but let's just say we just shoot robots and see some really cool weaponry too, with a weather system that changes. Anyways, is there a better version than the original? Today we are checking out every port of Turrican and ranking from worst to best. I will note here that the Sega Mega Drive game Mega Turrican will not be included as this was actually a sequel. It's very unusual where I rank a ZX Spectrum game as being one of the weakest games. That normally goes to the Amstrad CPC. Something I've found in most of my ports videos is that although Spectrum is often monochrome, games normally perform really well with plenty of speedy action. I'm afraid I didn't feel this with the Turrican Spectrum game. The game starts with a nice teletext style picture of Turrican. I have said it before, play Spectrum games using an OLED monitor and these colours look fantastic. Okay, so why is a game in my opinion not so great? Well, you can see that for a Spectrum game this one looks really nice with many colours being used all at once. That's great, and yeah, it looks nice, but in terms of gameplay, this was just overall a very janky game to control, and activating the laser beam seemed more of a chore to get it in the direction I wanted it to go. It is a fairly slow game in terms of its frame rates, which like I say is fairly rare for a Spectrum game to operate this slowly. Hit collision detection wasn't great at times. Once we arrive at buildings which are embedded into the sides of cliffs, color clash occurred and this looked really messy. Some Spectrum games can manage color clash better than others with its use of colors to make it not look so bad. Overall, I am really sorry ZX Spectrum fans, but I just think there is a hell of a lot better on our rubber keyed friends. I will note here that there was something of an enhanced version which released in 2021, literally named Turrican 2021 edition. Up next we have the Amstrad CPC release, which arrived in 1990 by Rainbow Arts. Now just like any other Mode 0 Amstrad game, these often look brilliant as this mode allows the Amstrad to display up to 16 colours on screen all at once. But this very often leads to slow performance, in some cases much worse than others. Now Turrican for the CPC certainly looks nicer than the C64's version. I think that could be appreciated when I say that. The problem is that the game is very slow rather than the extremely fast-paced original game. I felt that the controls here were very clunky too, and found myself dying more than the Commodore 64's version. The sound effects here are acceptable enough and does the job, but there is better on the CPC. In terms of difficulty levels, like I say, because this game is much slower paced and having those clunky controls just took away the fluid gameplay and just seemed to make it more challenging than it needed to be. I didn't didn't even notice any fades into darkness during this version, and found that sprites here looked different and everything was very much scaled down. Shooting the laser beam also felt a little wooden here. Let me just clarify, I don't think this is an absolutely horrendous version, but it certainly isn't the best of the Turrican ports. Although I am not a fan of this version, but I will be honest, or as honest I can with this video, it performs really nicely and does the job. Accolades published this portable version for the Game Boy in 1991. As a game itself, it's just an average running gun game. Personally, I would say that Batman was actually better in this. It is pretty dull to look at if we consider other games of this era for the Game Boy, which looked much better than this one, that is. Now, the thing I really disliked with this version was its music. I found this very repetitive and very annoying very quickly. So why did I rank this higher than the Spectrum and Amstrad ports then? Well, simply because of its speed and gameplay. It is fast to play and most likely on par with the C64 original game. A cool feature with this is that we have a continue option at the start menu where we can jump back into the action. Again, just like most versions of Turrican, this one is fairly challenging. I also found that sometimes jumping wasn't too responsive and the original Turrican game seen you jump very high. Overall, a mediocre version of Turrican for the original Game Boy. The PC Engine, or TurboGrafx 16, received a conversion of Turrican in 1991. This was by a company called Ballistic. Now, although this isn't strictly a bad version of the game, its issue is the insane difficulty level here. Likely the most difficult version of Turrican that I have played for this video. This could well be the Dark Souls of the PC Engine in toughness, that is. Enemies will deplete your life very quickly here. For a PC Engine game, Turrican on this platform is surprisingly pretty basic. Sprites themselves aren't particularly well designed, or rather nothing special, that is. As a game itself, it's average but really is let down by that extreme level of toughness and life depleting very quickly without any indication that you are dying, such as a noise to represent you are being hit. For a fairly advanced system compared with the previous 8-bit systems I've covered so far, I was fairly disappointed with this port. Colours are also pretty bland here too. The Atari ST conversion by Rainbow Arts, released in 1990, is a really good one. Of course, we have moved on to the superior platforms at this point, and this actually features music, but much nicer and more tolerable to listen to than the mere Game Boy's version. As random as it sounds, one of the things that impressed me most with this version was when rocks are being thrown down on you and exploding. Call me weird, but I just thought it was nicely done here in particular. This is a fairly impressive ST game. There is little issues here with frame drops, as many ST games that I covered so far in this series do tend to struggle at times. There is a slight drop occasionally, but nothing too significant to even moan about. Something which looks really nice here is when we drop down into the valleys and the change of background happens. It looks quite simply stunning here. The laser beam is really nice to control here too. The game starts with some voice synth welcoming the player to Turrican, and the tiles that unbuild themselves to start the stages is nicely done here too. Not sure if anyone ever noticed between this version and the next version, but the Atari ST's version doesn't feature animated waterfalls. Of course, this is miles ahead of the Commodore 64 game with colour, but that's simply the fact that the Atari ST could output more complex colours than the 8-bit micros could. Overall, one of the best Atari ST conversions I have personally played, and certainly a damn sight better than the shabby Shadow of the Beast port which I covered the other day. I am literally placing this Commodore CD-TV conversion in second place because given this game was put onto CD-ROM, it doesn't really offer much else than the next version. When the amount of storage of compact discs majorly surpassed floppy disks, it's likely not many people even played the CD-TV version. The so-called multimedia system, which admittedly looked like a really nice system, failed highly likely due to its introductory price of what would be the equivalent of just over $2,300, and it was really just a glorified Amiga 500. But going back to the game, a very lazy cash grab, but just one of the few games which are actually any good on the Commodore CD-TV. Now, you might notice with most versions in this video, I didn't actually get too far, in some cases not even making it to the robotic hand boss. This was simply because most versions were so damn difficult. The Commodore Amiga port, on the other hand, has a great balanced difficulty level. Let's talk the colours, graphics and presentation then. If you are not familiar with Turrican, I will quite happily say hands down that this version is far superior to any other version, including the Commodore 64's original game. This is quite simply visually stunning. Just after defeating the robotic hand, I go further into the game, which then flashes with lightning strikes in the background. This truly looks stunning, and it's likely the best effect to date that I have seen on an Amiga game. The elements from the ST's version, such as rocks falling from the sky and how the background colours change, this is just done so much nicer here with brighter colours being used. It is silky smooth to play with an excellent control scheme implemented for the laser beam, and the music is just outstanding here. Seriously, if you've never played Turrican, obviously this is my option, and I think it's the best to go for outside of the Commodore 64's game, which I would actually put in second place next to this one. The Amiga version by Rainbow Arts releasing this in 1990 is quite simply console quality, no doubt about it. A stunning game, even the animated waterfalls look awesome here. And anyways, that's it for ranking the various different ports of Turrican today. Let me know about your memories of playing Turrican back in the day, and which version did you have? It's a game that I seen advertised in Commodore Format magazine at the time, but I never actually owned it. But much later on in life, I learned more about Turrican and I learned to appreciate it. It's a quality game, and I totally recommend anyone checking this out who enjoys run and gun games. Anyways, drop us a comment as always, and until next time, thanks for watching.